Hi, welcome everyone. My name's Guy Royce, and I'm here with Nilanjan today to talk about speaking at conferences. And we're trying to kick off this little series where we talk about things that help developer careers. And lots of people are like, well, the way you get ahead is you speak at conferences, and that'll really get you out there. And, is there value in that? Is there not value in that? I've personally have spoken at conferences quite a bit, and Nilanjan has done this quite a bit himself. And so I thought we'd start off and ask Nilanjan, not that this is an interview or anything, this is just conversation. But
Yeah, totally.
ask Nilanjan, what's your conference speaking experience? What other kinds of things you've done, or some cool memories, or I don't know, just
Yeah.
start talking about your experience at
Yeah,
conferences.
yeah, totally. So I used to do that a lot. I used to have a job profile like you do right now. So I was when I was part of that startup called TypeSafe, my role kind of dictated that hey, you have to evangelize the new product and technology. So I did speaking a lot there. But before that, also I started speaking. Going back to what you said, I always thought speaking in conferences like the thing that gets you that reputation and recognition, right?
Yeah.
And not to mention, if you're passionate about something, if you share with fellow developers, is always exciting. I really used to enjoy speaking in conference. I don't do that anymore, but I have done. I mean, doing meetups to large conferences in US to international conferences all over the place.
What's the
What about you, right?
yeah, yeah, I spoke at a conference last week.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's COVID time right now, so they're all virtual.
that's
This
yeah,
today I recorded a talk for another conference. I speak at a few conferences a month. Um, the virtual,
that's awesome.
it being virtual's made it a lot easier. Um,
Uh-huh.
when you have to do it in person, it's a little more expensive, but it's also a little more time consuming. You
It
actually have to
is.
get there and then do the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and the international events are fun. Travel the world, see exotic
Mhm,
conference centers. It's a glamorous
mhm.
lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah. So one of my, I guess that's what we were trying to, one of the best conference, I mean, there are many good experiences. One of the conferences that I really kind of enjoyed speaking is a Java Zone. This is the conference happens in Oslo, Norway.
I have submitted to Java Zone
Uh,
and met
yeah,
some of the organizers, but they've never accepted any of my talks. Shame
yeah.
on them.
They will. So
Actually, I probably won't be
it's
doing as much
amazing.
Java now, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, actually, it's ironically it's Java Zone, but I did Scala speaking.
yeah,
They do all sorts of, they mix up
yeah.
topics a little bit.
That's in Oslo, right?
Yeah, Oslo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of it's like a stadium they rent out. It's
I've been in that
amazing. I mean,
stadium.
it's amazing. Yeah, yeah. It's so
It's the stadium in
there.
Oslo. I think there's only one. So
Yeah, yeah. They rent out. It's funny. I mean, I know we are supposed to talk about tech and meeting. Food is a very important part of the
it
conference
really
to
is.
experience, right? Yeah. So I remember the food experience because in typical conferences you get there is a lunch slot, right? Lunchtime, everybody gets together, have lunch, and then the speaking starts. For Java Zone, at least at the year I was there, the lunch was like we have continuous integration. They had continuous lunch. There was food available all the time. So there is no specific lunch break in that conference.
Yeah.
So you can walk out anytime, grab food. And when I say grabbing food, I mean, Europeans know how to do this well, I feel like. I mean, there was a sushi bar. I haven't seen conferences having sushi bar, ice cream parlors. So it's an amazing, like it's an amazing experience.
It's funny. I went to NDC Oslo a couple of years back, and it's in that same
Uh-huh.
auditorium there, right across from the train
Mhm.
station.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's right.
and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it, but it was only like 2 blocks from the hotel I was at.
Uh-huh.
And it was for NDC Oslo, and they did the same thing for food. They just have stations that are open all day, and
Mhm.
it's like here's like a meat, cheese, and olive sort of thing, and then
That's right.
here's a place
Yeah,
that's got
yeah,
pizza, and here's a place that has sandwiches,
yeah, yeah.
and just a wide variety of food served just sort of continuously. It was really nice.
Continuously.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It's
yeah.
amazing, actually.
That's a
And then
NDC does that in all their events. Actually, it's really
yeah,
cool.
and they organize a event for speakers. They will take out somewhere like seeing Northern Lights or
Yeah.
do this, do that. So it's always a good experience.
Yeah, the speaker parties are always
Uh,
nice too, and the speaker events.
Yeah.
NDC always takes people on boat tours. And so
Mm,
for in Oslo, that means you get on the boat and go out in the fjords
yeah.
and
Yeah.
eat boiled shrimp.
Yeah.
It's amazing. In
Yeah.
London, that's a
Yeah.
Thames tour.
Okay.
In NDC, Minnesota, that means a tour of the upper Mississippi River, which is not quite as impressive as the Thames or the fjords, but was still fun.
Mm, yeah. Totally. Totally.
So, so these are
So,
like some of the
I mean,
perks of being a speaker, right? You know,
yeah.
they usually will throw you a party. At the very
But
least, they have a speaker dinner, which is nice.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
nice perk. It
Which
makes
is
you feel
really nice.
special.
It's like the day before the conference
Yeah.
starts, right? You need to get speakers and all that. And we both have another favorite conference right here in Ohio, don't we?
Oh yeah, that
Code Mash.
can't forget
Yeah,
Code
it's
Mash.
in
Yeah,
Water Park. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. That's an awesome venue too. It's an amazing
yeah.
conference.
Well, and
Yeah,
one of the things that I was thinking about the speaker events. One of the things that happens at the speaker events, and there's usually like a speaker lounge, and some people
yeah.
will just hang out in there the whole time, prepping their talk that they should have
Oh,
made before they got to the conference. Um,
mhm,
and I like to call it the not ready room. You know, Picard
mhm,
has his
mhm.
ready room, and then the conference has the not ready room where you're not ready for your,
Not
yeah,
really.
you're still working on your talk. Um, but in there and at these events, you get to sort of network with the other speakers, which is
Mhm.
super valuable. Uh,
Very important.
and you can often get to network with the organizers as well, which is also super
Mhm.
valuable. Um,
Yeah.
and then if you can, you know, do a good talk and then meet these people, and that can, it's that one of those, that's that network. That's the thing that happens with networks where success begets success, success
Mhm.
begets success begets success. And so,
Right.
but if you
Yeah.
do really good things, but no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. And so you need the
Right.
network.
Right.
But you still need to be competent, which is kind of what we talked about in the last episode.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
in the speaker room and at the speaker events, you're kind of making those connections to make those next steps possible. And so they're very
Mhm,
valuable, and they're
mhm,
fun,
mhm.
and it feels really
Yeah.
good. I mean,
Totally.
it's nice to feel that you're,
Yeah.
well, quite honestly,
You're, you're,
you feel special, right? It's like,
you're you're like a rock star. Yeah.
yeah,
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
it's a wonderful feeling. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
But it's kind of, so when I started, I mean, that's what probably most of the people going to be looking for
yeah.
from us is how to kind of get started. I mean, not to mention I got lots of rejections too
Oh yeah.
initially.
I
I
still
mean,
get
it
rejected
it does,
all the
yeah, it
time.
does. You still, I mean, it totally, even that's actually good to know. It doesn't mean you just because you spoke to a bunch of conferences mean you automatically get selected. It doesn't work that way. So, what do you think is the most important thing they look for when you submit in conference?
Um, you know, I think it varies quite a bit.
Mm,
You know, some conferences are specifically looking for new and fresh speakers, or to give
mm.
people an opportunity to speak that haven't spoken before. And so if you're trying to break in, those are good conferences to reach out
Like
to.
what? Do you have some examples? I
Um,
mean, they might.
I can't think of any off the top of the head. I've just seen that in in sites
Like
where
I,
they
I
put
would
these.
consider CodeMash is one of that
Yeah,
those conferences, right?
yeah.
They do encourage new
I know
speakers.
Codeland in New York likes to do that. They're looking for new
Mm,
speakers they could mentor.
mm,
I typically don't submit there because they want to sit down and work with someone in a very detailed fashion and create a talk with them. And that's usually
mm,
not what I'm trying to do. And so what they're trying to do and
mm.
what I'm trying to do just don't line up. But
Right.
they're often looking for newer speakers that they can help mold into
Uh-huh.
being, launching
Uh-huh.
things. And so that's one.
Uh-huh.
A lot of
Uh-huh.
meetups are happy to take newbie speakers. I mean, I run a meetup. I run Columbus JS.
Uh-huh.
And I don't. Have you ever spoken at Columbus JS, Nilanjan? We should fix that. You can talk about all the wonderful
Well,
JavaScript
I,
that's up.
I'm not a JavaScript guy.
Yeah,
I
I know.
mean,
I'm kind of picking on you a little bit.
yeah,
um, but I like getting new speakers. I kind of view
yeah,
meetups as open mic night, and so
that's
if you
right.
want to
That's a really good
speak,
point.
you know, and if you've never done it before,
Yeah,
and I'm worried that like one person's going to give a talk and then if they're bad, because that can
yeah.
happen. Um, we
Mm.
all fail. I've given bad talks before. I've gotten bad reviews
Oh
too.
yeah. Oh yeah,
Um,
many.
and it's just so devastating when it happens. But
Mm.
if that's going to happen, I want to make sure that I I'll put two talks together. So it's like, okay, so this person's never spoken before. They're going to talk about this thing. It's half hour talk, and then after that we have Nilanjan who's going to talk about React.
Mhm.
And so then it's sort of like a double header. And so,
Mm.
so I do things like that quite deliberately.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Other conferences, when they're looking for an abstract, sometimes they're just sort of checking boxes for technology. Like
Mhm.
we want to have, we need to fill up these tracks with these types of topics, and so this is a little bit of a strategy. Is if you can find a technology that's less well a tech stack
Mhm.
that there's a track for, but there's not as many people that are into it, you can
Mhm.
get into it more easily. Like I've done a bunch of talks on WebAssembly. Not a lot of people are
Mhm.
doing WebAssembly talks, and so because it's a little bit of a
Mhm.
niche, I can get in there
Mhm.
and get a little bit of
Totally.
get more traction. Uh,
That's a really good point. Really, really good
yeah,
point. I mean, if you do want to talk about React.js for an example, well, there will be lots of abstract
yeah,
coming in that topic. So making that strategy is very important. So how do you so you said let's put some uh, tips here. So you say you go to the website of the conference,
yeah,
obviously, look at what they're looking for, like tracks they have,
yeah,
right? Yeah. Okay. And obviously you have to identify a track that you have some knowledge around that
yeah.
topic. You just cannot randomly pick one, right?
Right.
Obviously. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a track that you have enough of a foundation you can get into it, and then you want to
Mm,
learn it
mm,
because nothing will learn you better on a topic than
mm,
having to give a talk on it.
mm. So another important thing, I mean, I think this is what Ken Beck once said. I'll have to find the blog, and we'll link it at the show
Yeah,
notes or somewhere at the end. Um, Also try to understand the audience. Like Guy said, that Codeland in New York is more targeted towards new programmers,
yeah,
right? And there are some conference like Strange Loop, for an example, is targeted to very senior
yeah,
and deep, right? I mean, hardcore engineering. So understanding who typically shows up in the conference, what kind of audience shows up, is also very important to decide what that abstract
yeah,
going to be, right?
yeah. Well, then you really have two audiences.
Hmm.
So you've got the conference organizers who are going
That's
to
a good
select
point.
your talk, and then you have the conference attendees who are going to attend your talk. And what I've discovered is that the abstract that you write, which is the description of your talk, um, is for the conference organizers, and the title is for the people who will attend your
That's the
talk.
first hurdle, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, because the actual text of the abstract, the conference organizers will review that and then pick their talks
yeah.
from amongst them. Whereas
Right.
when it's actually day of the conference, you're walking around as an attendee and you're looking at the program. Maybe you've got a physical piece of paper, or maybe you're just looking on your smartphone. Probably your smartphone. This is 2021 after all. Um,
Mm.
and all you're looking at is the titles of the talks for the next time slot. This this React talk looks interesting. Oh, this talks about groundhogs and data science. That looks really interesting. And
Mm,
so getting a title that it has to do two things. It has to tell you exactly what the expectations of the talk are. Like I've had titles where I get feedback from the audience that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's like, well, if you'd read the abstract, it would have been, but you didn't because you just read the title. Is that on them?
mm,
A little bit,
mm,
but that's
mm,
still something that I could do something about. And
mm,
so it's got to convey succinctly what the talk's about, but also needs to be to grab attention over other talks. And so um, I dare to say almost clickbaity. Um, my personal formula is I try to do something fun. So,
yeah.
like talks I have out right now, I have one called Mystery Machine Learning,
Mm,
classifying text with Keras, RNNs, Scoob, and the gang. And so I've got a
mm,
Scooby Doo themed artificial intelligence talk. All
mm,
right, and so that title is kind of catchy and
mhm,
fun. I've
mhm,
got another one called Woodchucking, um,
mhm,
where predicting an early spring with Redis AI. And so I'm talking about Redis
mhm.
AI in this talk.
Right.
And so I had another one, Deep Learning Like a Viking.
Mm,
It's a Viking themed talk where I identified handwritten Viking runes. But what I'm doing
mm,
here is I'm
mm,
making something that's fun and different and kind of stands out amongst all the other talks. Because people will tend to give
mhm,
talks like um, building an app in React in 10 minutes, which
mm.
is, I mean, it tells you what it is. You know exactly what
Yeah.
they expect, but it doesn't. It's kind of dull. right?
Yeah.
And so,
Or why should I spend an hour listening to the talk? This could just be a blog post, right? I mean,
yeah,
there is
there's
also
that.
another thing like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I have done talks like, so I have made the same mistake before. So don't get me wrong. I had talks like, oh, 10 things you want to learn about Scala, or
yeah,
or why we do this. I mean, I did lots of dry, boring talks. So what I'm trying to say here is that it takes time. Where Guy is right now is through iteration and
yeah,
making mistakes and learning, figuring out, okay, this is the recipe that kind of works. Because it's another clickbait also. I mean, you were right, absolutely. Because as an attendee, typical conference, I personally like one-track conferences. I
yeah,
personally, I mean that, yeah, you don't get to get lots of speakers, but I mean, quality of the things goes high, and you don't feel like, oh, I'm missing something.
yeah.
But typical conference is going to have, I mean, I don't know, CodeMash has how many, like five, six, maybe.
I don't know.
It goes crazy.
Lots of
Yeah, I
tracks.
mean, there are lots
Yeah,
of parallel tags going on.
it has all the
So
tracks.
you're absolutely right that as an audience, I have like five or six choices.
Yeah,
So it's very important to have that title. I
yeah.
completely agree with you. I mean,
The key
and
point.
it's definitely working out
Yeah,
well.
the key point, and I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the key point was is that your title is for the audience, is for the
Yeah,
is for the attendees, and your abstract
yeah,
is for to get the
yeah,
attention of the organizers.
yeah.
Um,
Which is also, I mean, both needs to be there, because as an organizer, I'm thinking about, okay, will this speaker attract more audience,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's also another aspect of it. I mean, large big conferences, and I'm sure we can dive into that a little bit. They look at, okay, if I get Nilanjan or Guy as a speaker, will I attract more sponsors? Will I
yeah.
will I get more sign up? Those are also very important.
You know, and I'm kind of going off of a brand of myself, which is I try to do things that are fun. That's a
Yeah,
thing I do. I have
yeah,
given very successful talks that have very bland titles. I have one called An Introduction to WebAssembly. That's the
yeah,
whole title. There's not a really
yeah,
there's not a lot of there's no hook, um,
yeah.
but it's worked really well because WebAssembly is something a lot of people aren't talking about, and there's a lot of interest in. And so
Mm,
that's an example of finding a niche. And so
mm,
so you're playing all these things off of each other. Um,
mm.
and you know, I was thinking something I probably should mention too is that, and you kind of hinted at this. I've been doing this a long time now. I've been speaking at events for
Mm,
about a decade,
mm,
maybe a little longer, uh, both at local meetups and at small conferences. And I've been building expertise at this for the last decade. And
yeah.
my day job is as a developer advocate. And so
Mhm,
part of my job is to actually do this stuff. So I've had a lot of practice, and it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I speak internationally. It
mm,
won't happen overnight. Um,
yeah.
it's like anything. You start out in the farm leagues at the meetups within your own town. Um, that's easier to do now, and you should take advantage of the pandemic and say, hey, can I speak at this meetup in Austin
Mm.
or Toronto or London, right? Um,
And these meetup organizers, I mean, Guy and me, myself, I mean, we both run sorts of meetup here. We always constantly, meetup organizers are constantly looking for new
yeah,
speakers.
yeah,
So most of them welcome this when you reach out to them.
yeah. And you might get a small audience, but that's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I've spoken at meetups recently where there were
yeah,
12 people. That's a pretty
mm,
small audience.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
whereas what's the biggest audience you've probably spoken to, Nilanjan? Do you think? Estimate?
I don't know.
You're not sure?
No, not
Yeah.
sure.
Uh, I
It's been a while,
yeah.
so I don't know.
Probably hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds of
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably the same for me. You get an
yeah,
event, like a lot of events are in
yeah,
theaters, and I've
yeah.
spoken and had a theater full of people. Um,
Hmm.
I know Stir Trek here in Columbus
Yeah.
tends to broadcast it to multiple theaters, and so you've got a theater with a couple hundred people in it, and then two other
Hmm.
theaters in parallel for
Yeah.
overflow.
Yeah.
And so I've probably spoken to hundreds. I've certainly spoken with hundreds of people in the audience. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you found the experience that the larger audience is actually easier to get
Yeah.
engaged than the smaller audience?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I yeah. I mean, you need to. I mean, I think. I mean, once you get selected, I mean, getting selected in conference is a hurdle. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to. It's a right balance of guys. Absolutely right. Right balance of doing bit of strategy, understanding what type of people usually shows up. You could actually watch the videos from the previous years of the conference to understand the quality of the talk. That usually helps a lot. Then once you get selected, the audiences, I mean, I think key is engaging. I mean, I have done lots of deep talk where I'm feeling like I'm very passionate. I'm explaining lots of things, and I see people are not engaging. So I think, I mean, I have seen you talk. I know you do very well engage audience. I mean, this is a skill. I mean, you learn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it usually means, I mean, just ask them question, involve them. Usually, like for an example, I mean, this is kind of interesting. I'm glad I remembered this. So, I mean, I tend to do lots of like hands-on coding because that's another big hurdle, right?
Yeah.
Actually, live coding in front of 100 people,
I've done
and
that
people
many
get
times.
scared. Yeah, I mean, I do practice
Yeah.
obviously. That doesn't matter how many practices you do. I mean, you're gonna make mistake. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I mean, standing in front of the crowd, fear, maybe it's an end of the day, lots of things happen. But I've seen more mistakes you make, more engaging the crowds are. I mean,
Yeah.
they usually jump in saying, "Hey, Mr. Semicolon, oh, I know why the error is
I love
happening."
it when that happens because that means they're paying
Yeah,
attention.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
Uh,
So, I mean,
Fantastic.
those are the great opportunities to engage crowds, saying, "Okay, well, what do you think I should do next?" And
One of the
yeah,
talks, the WebAssembly talk I mentioned earlier, I
yeah,
I live code in WebAssembly text format, and it's
okay,
a little bit of a parlor trick, and I
yeah,
slavishly test drive it with JavaScript in the
okay,
browser,
okay,
and I remember when I gave it in Oslo actually,
mm,
that the audience was catching my mistakes. Like I made a mistake
yeah,
and they'd catch it in the syntax of this language that I just taught them about that they'd never seen before.
yeah.
And
That's awesome.
which is, yeah, it's awesome because that means that A, they were paying attention to what I was doing enough that they could see the mistake, and B, they understood the thing that I taught them about the language that I was using that they had never seen before, that they were able to
Mm,
correct, see my mistakes happen. And so
mm,
yeah,
mm.
but live coding is risky. Uh,
It is risky.
the trick is to narrow the variables.
Mm, mm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like
I mean, I
install
have
updates
seen
before talk.
people.
No, I'm not doing that.
So I have seen lots of speakers. They take the printout of the code and they're looking at the printout and typing in front of
I
people
can't say I've never
and
done
the
that.
audience. I haven't done that too. I guess that, I mean, some could be very involved, right?
Yeah,
Building an whole web application from scratch,
yeah,
maybe many things going on. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's going back to engaging audience. I mean, live coding is always fun.
yeah,
I mean, that's a very relatively easy way. If you're not a, I mean, if you don't have jokes handy with you, relatively very easy way to engage. After all, we are programmers. We love to see code. Uh, that usually makes the presentation interesting.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
so I guess one of the things is what are the career benefits of speaking at conferences?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I think that's it's turned into a career,
Oh yeah,
which is pretty cool.
for you. Mhm. Yeah, very
That's
cool.
not typical.
Yeah,
Um,
not.
by definition, there must be more developers than developer evangelists and developer advocates, because
Mm,
otherwise everyone is everyone's preaching to the choir, right? To extend
yeah,
the evangelism metaphor just a little bit further.
yeah.
But what are some of the benefits of doing it if that's not your job?
Yeah.
What are some of the advantages?
Like I know a very good. I grew up. For an example, maybe I should take a permission from Chris before I say his name. So I know a guy here, right in Ohio. I mean, he's a freelancer. He runs a company, a tech company, consulting company. But he also likes to speak in
Yeah,
conferences. I mean, this is. I mean, for some of the freelancers, this is a biz dev type work, right? I
yeah,
mean, you get so you get your name out there. That's always helpful. I mean, I remember doing a Scala training in CodeMash,
Yeah.
where I met Chad Fowler. That built a good relationship with Chad Fowler. We are still in touch. He offered me a job in Living Social, my kind of first Scala paying job. That triggered a whole new different level of career transformation for me. So I mean, there are tons of magical thing could happen that I mean you can't even think of. I mean,
I know. That's how I got my job at Pillar, is because I had started speaking before I joined Pillar, and
there you go. That's,
so they I was well enough and well known enough that they skipped the technical interview. Like, no, we've seen Guy talk. He's technical. It's not a problem. He knows how to do this.
uh,
Enough people had seen me speak and that was just speaking locally in the Columbus scene.
yeah,
I don't think I'd even spoken at a conference yet. I'd just done meetups. Oh, I did.
yeah.
I had done a precompiler, a workshop at CodeMash.
Okay.
So that
Yeah,
helped.
that's why I did a pre-compiler too.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
but so that greased the wheels of me getting hired at
Yeah,
Pillar,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
which is a place where Nilanjan and I used to work together, just for context for
yeah,
those
yeah,
watching.
yeah.
Um, and then,
And even if you're not looking for a job, I mean, meeting guys like Guy Royce. I mean, if you want to meet Guy Royce, I mean, the easiest way to find meet him is in conference.
yeah,
I mean, there are good speakers and good tech people out there. I mean, that's a great way to network too. Networking is a huge
yeah,
opportunity for tech conferences. I mean, once you get a speaker, like Guy was saying, you get invited to an exclusive club, which is speaker room,
yeah.
uh, or the speaker dinner. I mean, that's how you meet other technical
Yeah.
speakers and leaders, thought leaders.
I remember, this is how I met Jim Wyrick. I mean, I
Yeah,
attended several of his workshops over the years, but then
yeah, totally.
we did the putting the D&D and TDD at CodeMash, and he attended it. And,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Yeah,
and so, and then from
makes
that point
sense.
on, we were connected. Um,
Yeah,
and so, and I've met a lot of people that way, through those sorts of connections.
yeah. I mean, I met like author of this framework, author of that framework. That
Yeah,
it happened so many times. Like, wait, what? You did this? I used this. Oh, why did you design? I mean, there's lots of interesting memories and conversations I had in tech
yeah,
conferences that you'll not get anywhere.
yeah. I met, um, oh, I'm blanking on his name. The guy that created the wiki, Ward Cunningham.
Uh, uh, Word
I
Cunningham.
met Ward Cunningham at a conference in Salt Lake City many years ago,
Yeah,
over a decade ago now. And
yeah,
I was speaking there early in my speaking career. And
yeah.
we went tubing down the Provo River with a bunch of other people. And
That's awesome.
we talked about Coffeescript and Cub Scouts. Remember
Mhm.
Coffeescript?
Yeah, people still use it.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I believe everyone's talking about TypeScript now. That's the new,
yeah,
the
yeah,
trendy flavor of
yeah,
JavaScript. So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, one of our project we're using TypeScript. It's interesting. You know, I like types.
yeah, I see their value.
Yeah,
We've had this conversation. This isn't the place to have
yeah,
the guy has a
yeah, no,
preference and he
yeah.
knows it's wrong conversation.
So what is the one thing you want to say our listeners that how I mean, getting started is always hard, right? I
Yeah,
mean, I just want to. I mean, I don't think there is an recipe for this. Maybe there is. Maybe you have this recipe how to get into tech conferences. I mean, I feel like it's a combination of. I mean, a topic is very important. I feel like it needs to
yeah.
have something. It's give a niche or something that you think people are interested in. More importantly, something that you're passionate about.
That's what I was going to say that
Then
too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Then finding the right conference. There are many conferences. I mean, COVID probably made it a little trickier, but meetups are out there.
I think COVID's actually
But
made it easier in some ways
okay, okay,
uh,
okay.
for two reasons. One, that you can cast a wider net
Yeah.
because you're just sitting in your living room or your office or wherever, and so
Mhm.
speaking at an event anywhere in the world is easy.
Yeah.
Um, and so that gives you more opportunities to try.
So how do
You
you
can buy more
find it? I
lottery
mean, it's
tickets, right? But
yeah, yeah. No, sorry, sorry.
it's
Yeah.
also there's a certain percentage of speakers I've spoken with who don't want to do online talks. They're like, I'm not doing any talks until COVID's over. And
Mm,
so I mean, it's maybe about 1 in 5, 1 in 10, but
Mm,
it makes it just a little smidgen easier to get in. So,
mm,
so, but I would say actually start with meetups. And before you
mm,
even start with meetups, just start attending meetups.
mm,
Because you attend the meetup, you meet people, you chit chat, you get to know people. The organizers are
mm,
usually there because it's 20 people, right?
mm,
And so they're hanging out. You can
mm,
talk with them, um,
mm.
and you can start seeing the things that people are talking about. You can start observing how speakers do their thing,
Yeah,
and then from there you can start putting together talks on things that interest you,
yeah,
and then try it out at a meetup first, and then submit
yeah,
it to a
yeah,
conference. Um,
yeah.
and submitting a conference is pretty easy. A lot of conferences use Sessionize, which is fantastic. Um,
Mm,
but people at meetups will talk about conferences they've gone to, and so you can find those. I use because you asked how to find conferences. I use this. There's a couple of mailing lists I'm on. There's CFP Land and the
mm,
Tech Daily CFP or something like that. And so I
mm.
get emails every day of tweets of conferences that are coming up. Um,
Yeah, that's a good link to provide to everybody. CFP Land is a really good
yeah.
website to subscribe to. Yeah.
And so you'll just get a daily or weekly email with upcoming conferences
Mm,
worldwide. I follow the conferences on Twitter,
mm,
so that makes a big difference because you can, uh, you know, you can see when they announce their stuff. Lots of times they'll have a mailing list to sign up to. So when you find a conference, sign up and get on their mailing list, and then they'll tell you when they're looking for speakers, and then they'll tell you when their event is. Um,
So is it matters just thought of it? I mean, it could be help the audience here. Does it matter when do you submit? Should you submit as soon as possible? I mean, I'm a pretty lazy guy. I wait till the last day
I
to submit. It doesn't matter.
depends on the conference. For
Mm,
the most part, no. And because I do the same thing, I tend to wait to the latest responsible moment to submit to a conference.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
submitted to I think 4 conferences today,
Mm,
and they all had dates that were due this week.
interesting.
But some conferences will do rolling acceptances,
Mm,
and so they're like, well, if we see a talk we like come in, we're just going to accept it. And so if you come in later, everything tends to fill up. And so for those conferences, uh, you should submit early. Now, do I?
they will tell you about that. I
They
mean, do they
normally
tell
tell
you?
you up front that that's the
Okay.
way they do things. Um,
Mm,
I know, like I'm on the board. I'm on the selection committee for RedisConf this year,
mhm.
and so we're looking for speakers for that, of course. And we're not going to start picking speakers until after the CFP closes, and
So
that's
what
what
kind of speakers
CodeMash
you're
did.
looking for?
Anyone that's passionate about Redis, basically. So if someone's done something cool with Redis, or did solved a really cool problem, or has a really cool feature they like, or just has some exciting story to tell about Redis, then we're gonna uh, we want those talks.
There you go. It's a huge opportunity, guys.
Yeah,
Submit there.
yeah,
Put the links. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But there's tons
Uh,
of conferences. I've been on the selection committee side. I've been on the speaking side. I've been on the attendee side of conferences. Um, hallway track, best track in the conference usually.
mhm,
But don't not go to talks. You know,
yeah,
there are things to be heard and learned.
yeah.
So, uh,
It's sometimes hard if you're a little shy, but yeah, I agree with that.
yeah,
Holloway is the best way to randomly bump into an interesting person
yeah.
or people.
Open
Uh,
spaces at conferences are another good way to do that. Uh,
I like that.
yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah,
Now, someone will just pick a topic, they'll put it on the board,
yeah,
and then say at two
yeah,
o'clock, we're meeting in open space room number 3, and we're going to talk
yeah,
about Svelte,
yeah,
or you know,
mhm,
or we're going to talk about
yeah,
Keras or TensorFlow or
yeah,
something. Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then everyone gets there, and then whoever shows up is who shows up, and you have a conversation. And usually
yeah,
they're lightly attended. Most people
yeah,
want to do the big events, but you get
yeah,
an interesting topic. Maybe it's a topic that's not being represented well in the conference,
yeah.
and you get maybe half a dozen people show up or a dozen people show up, and you can just have a friendly little conversation. So,
Mm.
oh, and
Should-
if
mm,
you're at a conference and you want to go up and talk to the speaker afterwards, but you're afraid that you would be bothering them, you're not.
Yeah, they love that
Yeah,
actually. They really like
yeah,
that.
um, yeah. It's fantastic. It's I love it when that happens.
Yeah, because there is a couple of reasons. Obviously, I mean, that provides feedback to them. I mean, all the speakers look for feedback.
Yeah,
And second is preparing for a conference is a it takes time. It's not easy. I mean, you have to do slides, you have to practice them if there are code examples. So most of the speakers put lots of hours on each presentation.
yeah.
So when they do, even if they're speaking for 30 minutes, there could be, I mean, I don't know how many hours you spend in preparing for a conference. It could be I mean, if you're doing a new topic, it could be a week, sometimes a
I
couple of weeks, even month
dozens
to
of
prep for a
hours.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they love feedback. So that's the win-win opportunities. Speaking of slide deck, I think I should throw it out there because we as a programmer kind of PowerPoint. That's for business people. We don't do PowerPoints.
Yeah, we're
I mean,
programmers.
I
We
know
use Keynote.
tons.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know lots of speakers out there who doesn't use slides at all. I mean, it's slides actually makes it easy, but you can just open a VI or your IDE and start coding live. I mean, that could be a presentation too.
I have done that before.
Yeah,
I did a Meteor talk where it was all no
yeah,
slides, just code. Actually, it's on
yeah.
YouTube. I think it got 17,000 views.
You should link that too.
Yeah,
I mean, that would
it's
be a really
Meteor.
good
It's
example
old.
for programmers.
Um,
Still, I mean,
uh,
the pattern is
I got lucky there because it was the timing was such there wasn't a lot of good Meteor content,
yeah.
and I mean, video was one of them when people would try to find Meteor content. And then I got all kinds of mean comments because I dissed Bootstrap uh, in my talk. So, but
Well, I look at the ear.
yeah. Well, they were all shortly after I didn't realize
Yeah,
that I just uploaded the video, forgot about it, and let it sit there. And then I
yeah,
started getting comments on my YouTube video, and I'm like, what's going on here? I'm
yeah.
getting mean comments from random people on the internet. Uh, um,
Yeah,
and then I'm like, oh, wow, this has got a lot of views. Oh, well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, um, but yeah,
That's
the
cool.
feedback is
Yeah,
important. Come up, speak afterwards. I always like that. It means that you care. It means you like the talk.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so,
And I mean, I'm not sure I should I say that. Maybe I will. I'm willing to volunteer. Guy will too. I will convince him. If you guys are submitting for a conference, if you want us to take a look at it, I mean, I'll be happy
yeah.
to review it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, until this video goes viral and then it turns into 500 a day, and then I'm going to say no. But if I get like maybe one or two a month, I'm good.
yeah,
I did a
yeah,
thumbs up, but you didn't see it because it was off camera.
yeah. We'll do it.
I'm off center here so that everyone can see my awesome Viking helmet and dice and stuff there. So
Actually, speaking of it, that's an awesome
yeah,
background. My background kind of sucks a little bit.
yeah.
I have a huge whiteboard, but that's okay. I will fix it soon. Speaking of feedback, this is one thing, my pet peeve actually. I mean, when you don't get selected in conference, I haven't got a good feedback. Why? I mean, usually people, they don't provide good feedback, unfortunately. They give the standard language,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think it's just because they've got. I mean, these conferences are almost always run by volunteers
Yeah.
who are doing something in their spare time as well, and I think they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. And
Yeah.
I don't like
But we said
written feedback, like surveys after a talk. People will be
mm,
mean. And I mean, it kind of hurts a little bit, right? You'll focus on the negative comments. I would
yeah,
rather
yeah,
have vocal feedback, like someone come up to me and tell me, I think that this talk was good, but except for this, this, and this, because people aren't going to be a
yeah,
jerk in person, but it's easy to be a jerk by writing something on a piece of paper or providing feedback in an app.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so uh, you will get mean
So
feedback.
I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. I mean, it's a mean feedback. So I used to be part of No Fluff Just Stuff, their conference group.
How do you
Okay,
not know Brian
so they
Sam Bowden? He was part of No Fluff Just Stuff.
maybe the timing was different. Maybe I know him. It's been a while back.
We were talking before we got on
I'm
camera
not
for
part
everyone
of them
else.
anymore. I mean, I enjoyed the trip.
Yeah.
They're an awesome group, obviously. Um, so I remember, I don't know which city was that. While I connected the projector to my Mac,
Yeah.
and it was not working. Okay,
Yeah.
for a couple of minutes, I mean, when shit happens, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how many incidents. We should share some of the stories
Yeah.
actually. So it's not connecting. I have this room full of people staring at me. Uh,
That's the
so I'm
worst.
not really good at jokes. I can throw jokes, but I was kind of freaking out. It's been 10, 15 minutes, then they started then technician came and something was wrong with Mac. I mean, it actually didn't work through the presentation. So I had to switch laptop. By the time it was 30 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, I tried to engage. Maybe I started talking or something. But again, at the end of the presentation, it's kind of unfortunate. I understand. And I got all this mean comments saying, I'm sitting there for 30 minutes. What's happening? This bullshit, that bullshit. It hurts. I
Yeah.
mean, it was me. Like I mean, I have no control over this.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you also get the feedback on things that you did have control over, and it's like, oh God, that hurts.
yeah,
And then sometimes you just have a bad talk, and
yeah,
it's tempting to blame the audience, but lots of
yeah,
times
yeah,
it's just you weren't on, and
yeah,
sometimes the
yeah,
audience isn't super into it either. Um,
yeah.
I found that I'd rather give a
I mean, I'm not necessarily blaming. I mean, I
yeah.
know
Well,
there was an odd. Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to say is don't blame your audience. That's not really fair,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You can only take
yeah.
action on the things that you can control,
Right,
and
right.
um,
Yeah,
some audiences are harder to warm up than others, and sometimes it has to do with the space.
yeah,
Like if you got 20 people in a space that's too big, it's going to feel like the talk is you're just not landing because you can't connect with anyone. But then if you got a space that's too small and there's only a dozen people in there, it can be
mm,
super energetic, and so that crowd
yeah,
brings that energy.
oh, yeah,
And so that makes a difference. So if you've got if you find you're speaking to a room that's just bigger than it needs to be for your talk,
yeah,
um, be prepared for that, because that's how that works. It just
yeah,
uh, conversely, bigger crowds are easier to energize. Like if
yeah.
you ever
It's
watch
a big.
rock concerts, the way the stars can get on stage there and they can manipulate the
Yeah,
crowd.
yeah, yeah,
It's easier to do when there's 20,000 people, right? You know, you got
yeah,
500 people or 300 people. That's easier to get that crowd going. But if they're spread out, if you had like 300 people in an arena, it doesn't work. So
yeah. I mean, I usually in those cases, I mean, I'm pretty sure you do that too. I kind of say, "Hey, come closer." Sometimes I drop the mic and we just talk directly.
yeah,
I mean, I had some really good presentations like that. I mean, going back to how do you, maybe we should talk about this before we wrap it up.
yeah,
I mean, how do you define success in this? I mean, how can you tell that you really had a good presentation or a good day? I mean, it's obviously the feedback and how well the audience was engaging with you. That's another good metrics. I mean, like end of the day, I mean, I feel like end of the day, if you have excited one person even out of 20 or 100,
yeah.
I think you should consider that as a success.
I uh, I think that's completely correct. I know that
Yeah.
what I look for personally, what I try to when I give a talk, the thing that I see as success is, I mean, I set a higher bar for myself than I should,
I
right?
yeah.
Like if I don't have people laughing at my talk, at the jokes that
Mm,
I'm making, I feel like I'm not succeeding. Um,
mm,
which isn't realistic. Um,
yeah, yeah,
and so for me, success is you can feel it in how engaged the audience is.
true.
You can tell how much they're paying attention. You can look and see whether they're looking at their phones or not. You can you can you can get that. There's a feedback that comes back and forth in the audience, and this is lost in online, which makes it really hard to do online.
That's true.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I can generally tell or not. Now, like I said, my bar for myself is very high.
Yeah.
If people aren't laughing, I don't feel like I've done well. But I remember after a talk I gave in Louisville, Kentucky, and the guy came up to me afterwards and said, "Well, you did a good job." I said, "Thanks. I didn't really don't feel like I did that great. It's not my best presentation, not my best giving of this presentation." And they told me, I think, because I felt like I had kind of given an off talk, and he said, "Well, I
Mm,
think you on a bad day is better than a lot of people on a good day."
mm,
And I have to remember that. Because even though I don't necessarily feel it, doesn't mean it's not actually
Yeah,
good. And I go off
yeah,
of how I feel to feel
yeah,
like whether I did a good talk or not. That's my primary feedback mechanism is I felt like that went
yeah,
well. I felt like that didn't. Um,
yeah,
but my feelings aren't trustworthy because they're influenced by a lot
yeah,
of things. And so just because I feel like
yeah.
it didn't go well doesn't mean that it didn't make a good video or that people didn't get a lot out of it. Uh,
That's a good point. Yeah,
so, um, and that's kind of what I mean when I set my bar for myself is really high. But for
yeah,
the attendees, it's still working even when I feel like I've had an
yeah,
off day. So
yeah. Yeah, and then again, I mean, at the end of the day, for all the speakers, I mean, speaking on behalf of all the speakers out there, I think the end goal is to kind of excite the audience there, right? Helping them out. That's the only drive for making this, and then sharing what we are excited about.
yeah,
Um, uh, so it's, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's why, I mean, turns out attention is so important, right? Anyway,
yeah,
right? So getting feedback, engaging audiences, you're right. I mean, the key metrics. I mean, laughing is important for you because that's a very important part of your presentation,
yeah,
how you deliver, how you do your things, right? For me, if I'm doing live coding, it's very important how people are paying attention to my code, or
yeah,
they're asking questions if the concept is harder. So it depends, like what are you going after, right? There needs to be, obviously you need to teach the tech topic, whatever the topic you're explaining there. There needs to be another thread, I guess, right? Now thinking about it, another thread is constantly thinking how I'm going to engage the audience
yeah,
with this topic.
yeah. You have to have that engagement because one of the things I figured out was is if the audience is engaged and had fun, one of the key things
Yeah,
they'll remember is that they had fun.
that's right.
Right? They'll remember that people don't tend to remember the exact words. They tend to remember the feelings they had at events. And then they said something like
Mm-hmm,
this, and that made me feel this way. And so you remember the feeling,
mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm,
but you don't remember the exact details. You remember what you learned
mm-hmm,
too. I mean, that's not without merit,
mm-hmm.
but there
Yeah,
is a uh, bringing a little fun, or it was energizing, and people remember things
yeah,
like that. And
yeah,
you can almost get away with just being funny and not actually having good content, but not quite,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's not sustainable. That's popcorn, right? It's empty
Right,
calories. Uh,
right, right.
People enjoy a candy bar, but if they go to conferences and have candy bars all the time and don't actually get any meat and veg,
Right,
then their
right.
boss stops paying for them to go to conferences. So,
Yeah, yeah,
because they're not actually learning anything. So,
yeah.
um, but
That's
you want
also actually,
both. You want both of
yeah,
those elements in
yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, that brings in a really interesting point that we haven't talked about. I mean, attending tech conferences is also important. Maybe you should start there if you are not doing that.
Yeah.
Like companies have a sponsorship. If not, I mean, now Guy is right. I mean, with COVID, most of the tech conferences are virtual. I mean, some of them are, all of them are now kind of free, right?
A lot of them are, not all of
Or
them,
yeah, okay, okay,
but
yeah.
they're all
So
greatly discounted.
yeah,
It's like, hey, attend this
yeah,
conference for 45 euros.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's not
yeah,
very much for a tech conference.
yeah.
Um,
Maybe we should do some examples of good presentations that we have seen. That might be like in guiding, like, hey, if you want to do a talk, do it like this is a good example
yeah,
of what a good tech talk looks like. I mean, that could be
yeah.
useful.
I got a good formula for things to write in an abstract from Jim Holmes that I tend to follow. Uh,
Oh wow,
yeah,
share that. I'll give it to me. I would
yeah.
love that.
It basically says, uh, first the first part of it says problem you're going to solve. The second part
Mm,
is um, what to expect to have happen in the talk. What's going to happen in the talk,
uh,
and then the third part
uh,
is how you are changed after you've gone through the talk. So,
beautiful.
I usually do that with state the problem in a fun or humorous way, and then
Mm,
talk about how we're going to solve that problem in the talk, and
mm,
all the technology we're going to learn about that solves that
mm,
problem, and at the end
mm.
talk about how afterwards you can go and do this thing. So that
Beautiful.
tends to be how I format my abstracts.
Yeah, that hits all the checkpoints, right? I mean, what is this? How are we doing this? What value I'm going to get out of
Yeah,
this? Like, or how can I use it to my
yeah.
job? I mean, yeah,
Do you
that's
have this
perfect.
problem? Here's how you can solve it. And when you're done,
Yeah,
you can go out into the world and
yeah,
solve it.
Yeah. Which is really interesting because it becomes immediately filter for our audience. Do I have this problem? No, then don't go to that talk,
Right.
right? Another important thing is that I I heard that in many conferences there, Sue. I mean, you can always, if you, as an audience, and I do that. I mean, and that's interesting how you feel about that. I don't know. I mean, I could randomly end up in a talk and first 5 minutes, and it's okay to say, "Hey, I'm not interested in assembly or React JS. Just walk out and spend your time somewhere
Yeah.
else." I mean, you don't have to sit around the whole presentation, be grumpy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm thinking about negative feedback I've gotten has basically been, I wish I would have attended another talk but it was too late.
That's exactly what I'm
It's
saying.
like, well,
Don't do that. Yeah, I
and
mean, yeah,
it's like, well, if you'd read the abstract, which we talked about already,
yeah, yeah,
then you
yeah,
would have known that the talk wasn't what you wanted. But people don't
yeah,
generally read the abstracts. Uh,
yeah,
the conference organizers do. So you need to try
yeah,
and
yeah,
distill those same 3 points into the title, which is
yeah, yeah.
really, really hard to do.
Really, really hard.
Uh,
Yeah,
I will literally spend a couple hours coming up with a title,
yeah,
because I'm trying to get just the perfect theme and just the right
yeah,
words in there, and I'll just beat the hell out of that title until it's what I want it to be.
yeah, yeah.
Because it's
I mean, this
the
is a.
number one hook. It's like a title on a YouTube video, right? What should we make the title of this video? It got meta all of a sudden, but it's like the title on a YouTube video, right? It's the one thing that everyone sees that they could click.
Yeah,
I mean, we have the thumbnail as well, so we got that going for us. But
yeah, yeah. Yeah, our title
yeah,
exactly. It got meta very quickly.
yeah,
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, we're figuring out it's hard. It's a constant. It's a moving target.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. Um, all right. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. We've
yeah,
been talking for an hour now. Yeah,
yeah. We might
yeah.
have to split this into
It
two.
was fun.
Nah, we don't need to
Yeah,
split
yeah.
into
It
two.
was fun.
We'll upload
Yeah,
this for y'all as a mammoth
yeah,
1 hour
yeah,
long chit
yeah,
chat about
yeah.
conferences between Nilanjan and I. So cool.
Yeah, and reach out to us. I mean, like you want to review us, your abstract, whatever thoughts and your experiences, even.
Yeah. If you got questions,
And we'll put some links at the show
yeah.
notes. Yeah.
If you got questions about the
Sorry, go
stuff
ahead.
we talked about here, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah,
Leave comments below. We can answer those as well.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah. You got anything else you want to say, Nilanjan?
No, I'm good.
I'm good too. So thanks a lot,
Yeah,
everybody, and we'll see you next time.
thanks.
Which button do I press here? There we go. Bye.